Mr. Garcia from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, of course, to Mr. Dodaro, and want to just thank you for all the work that you do and your team does. We know that in the last 2 years since President Biden took office, we've seen an incredible amount of progress, and a lot of us are really grateful for the work that's happened throughout the administration and throughout all levels of government. We've demonstrated that our government can work better, efficiently, and still get a lot of progress for the American people. And the administration has clearly provided stable leadership, in much a contrast to the Trump administration and their years of chaos across our government. Now, Brookings reports that top-level turnout is down from 92% during the Trump administration down to 44% now, which is the lowest in recent history. And those results, I think, are pretty clear across the government. Now, Mr. Dodaro, since the last 2021 report, of the 34 high-risk areas that the GAO identified, that have been identified, how many of those have seen improvements of those 34?
16.
And that's essentially half of those areas. So those improvements in the last 2 years have happened under President Biden. And how much financial benefit total has that brought through those improvements?
Well, we've categorized at least and recognized the $100 billion of financial savings to the government. But I want to add, though, that I think, while the administration's done a very good job, a lot of the progress is due to the Congress, too, acting on a number of pieces of legislation. So I want to make sure Congress gets its credit. Sometimes it gets its blame. In this case, they deserve some credit, along with the administration. I'm very pleased with their engagement.
So approximately $100 billion in financial benefit, improvements to 16 of 34 high-risk areas, obviously support for the work that Congress is doing as well. All seems to be very good news and a good direction. And Mr. Dodaro, since the GAO began publishing the high-risk ratings, has any congressional term yielded more progress than the last Congress in the 117th?
No.
So I wasn't a member of the 117th. I wish I was, looking at those numbers, but I do want to congratulate the work that's done in the last 2 years for the incredible savings and really reforms that have made our government work better for the American people. And so I want to note that. Now, despite this historic progress that we're seeing and the benefits to everyday Americans, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, unfortunately, want to propose just damaging spending cuts that would damage a lot of this progress. I want to highlight a couple more of those pieces. In 2021, of course, Congress passed the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, that provided $541 billion for surface transportation and transferred about $270 billion to the Highway Trust Fund. For those of us that are in districts that work a lot with ports and the supply chain, this is really critical for. Now, did the GAO report identify what would have happened to the solvency of the Highway Fund without this funding?
It would have been insolvent.
So we would have so our Highway Trust Fund would have gone insolvent had it not been for the action that happened through the Congress and the President of this last Congress. Just want to make sure that's very clear.
Yeah, no, that's clear. And in the preceding Congresses, I mean, the Highway Trust Fund has not had enough money automatically generated through revenues for a number of years, and Congress has been augmenting that.
I completely
with general appropriations.
Completely agree with you. Completely agree with you there. And on climate resiliency, another area, President Biden and more than 20 agencies have taken steps to improve resiliency, improve sustainability. Did the GAO identify what happens to the government's fiscal exposure if we don't address climate change?
Fiscal exposure will continue to grow. I mean, that's why we have it on the high-risk list. It's very important to build resiliency up in front, but also as part of the in 2018, Congress passed legislation to allow some of the recovery money to also go toward building back better than what you did before, rather than just replacing what was there.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, investments in climate change lower the government's fiscal exposure. And that's something that has been pretty clear in what you're saying. Investments in climate change are actually good for the government, good for efficiency, and obviously important for us to save our planet and our country. So thank you for reinforcing that. And of course, despite of all these incredible progress that the last Congress made, the President made, Republicans are still trying to propose cuts across our government, which is really unacceptable. They're getting investments in climate, they're getting investments in all the great work that happened in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And so thank you for pointing out the actual progress has been made through President Biden and when we had in the 117th Congress, when Democrats controlled the House. With that, I just want to thank you again for your service and to the service of your team, and I yield back.